Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you here on this beautiful summer morning. We had a little bit of a sprinkle out there, and I was kind of hoping for rain on the garden beds, but I think we're going to have a sunny day again. But I appreciate your spending some time this morning with us for this special hour. And we're grateful to have Ralph Leesburg as our musician today. Let's thank him for being here this morning. Wonderful, wonderful. I don't think we have any newcomers in the house, so I won't tell you about the gift bags we have back there. You will know about masks and sanitizer being available if you need it near the entrance back there. And we want to thank everyone for your ongoing support of the church. With the donations you send in or put in the baskets here, that keeps us humming along, and we are truly grateful for your support. Not a lot of announcements to mention today, but we'll be looking see if anyone has any birthdays or anniversaries. At the end of the service, we'll ask you about that. This is the first Sunday of August. It's hard to believe. The summer is flying by so quickly. So we'll take a moment to offer a blessing up for those with special days this month. And I think that's about it. We begin always with prayer and by beginning to think about who or what we are lifting up in prayer. Our loved ones, our neighbors, our community, our country, our world, our beautiful planet. As we begin to let our minds move in that direction, Ralph will lead us toward prayer with a song by Eddie Watkins Jr. called God Is I Am.
God is, I am, right here, right now, right here, right now. God is, I am. God is, I am, right here, right now, right here, right now. God is, I am. God is, I am, right here, right now, right here, right now. God is, I am.
Let's allow ourselves to close our eyes and become more centered and still and more alert to that life within us, that flow of divine energy, of healing energy, that steadying peace, that wisdom that is available to us, that renewing strength that is God in us. We feel ourselves centered in that place within where we know our oneness with God and all that that makes possible for us, for each other, for living beings everywhere. The unflappable, renewing life of God is the truth we are affirming for ourselves and all those we're lifting up in prayer this morning. Always a new chapter unfolding, a new story to be told. Always our lives unfolding in new directions and are being guided forward from within by God's wisdom, God's courage, God's strength, God's love. How grateful we are to have these moments in prayer, to know together these highest of all truths, our oneness with the living God. Without exception, every one of us deeply connected to God and being guided by God's love and grace, moment by moment, by day and by night. This is the truth we affirm this morning for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our community, for our planet, for all the living creatures, all living beings everywhere. We are one with the living God, and all is well. And so it is. Amen. All right. Ralph is going to do another song for us now by wonderful songwriter Tom Kimmel, we've had here at the church before. I think it's called Shallow Water. Thank you, God.
Actually, he's played that up here. Actually, we sang that up here with him. I do it a little different than he does, though. I will not drown in shallow water, not with your love within my reach. I did not come this far to falter, and I'll not rest until I'm free. You are the sun, you are the flower, you are the wind across the sea, and I will kneel here at your altar and pray you take my soul to keep. For your love, my eyes are open. For your love, I'll learn to see. And in your name, my bread is broken. And by your grace, I'll rest in peace. I will not drown in shallow water, not with your love within my reach. I did not come this far to falter, and I'll not rest until I'm free. Oh, precious one, you are the mountain, you are the earth beneath my feet. In you we're one now and forever. In you I find the love in me. For your love, my eyes are open. For your love, I'll learn to see. And in your name, my bread is broken. And by your grace, I'll rest in peace. I will not drown in shallow water, not with your love within my reach. I did not come this far to falter, and I'll not rest until I'm free. No, I'll not rest until I'm free.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
What a great song. And I loved your rendition, Ralph. That was lovely. Oh, thinking about storytelling today. I happened to catch an interview with a famous storyteller named Kling. I'll say a little bit more about him in a bit, but so I was thinking about storytelling jokes. So kids are about to head back to school here soon. It's hard to believe. But, so it's sort of a story about going back to school. Mother goes to wake up her son for school and says, you know, come on, summer vacation is over now, honey. It's first day of school. Let's get going. And the son says, I don't want to go to school, Mom. Please don't make me. I hate school. And she says, well, it just can't be that bad. Don't be silly. Give me 2 reasons why you don't want to go back to school. He said, well, 2 reasons, that's easy. All the kids hate me, and all the teachers think I'm stupid. And the mother says, well, I just don't think that's true at all. You're just going to have to get up and get yourself going. And he says, I just don't want to go. Give me 2 reasons why I should. And the mother says, well, you know, first of all, you're 60 years old, and second, you're the principal. All right. Not everybody wants to go back to school. We share stories a lot. It's really, you know, human beings are kind of narrative creatures. We learn by stories. The power of our storytelling is really another one of the ways we use this kind of law of mind action in our lives, envisioning new possibilities and moving toward them. A lot of the way that's done is through the stories we hear, the stories we share with one another, the stories we tell ourselves and each other, and it's always an ongoing process of stories. People have always told stories. They bring comfort, they bring healing, they bring wisdom, they bring counsel. Stories are deeply important in our lives, and for good reason. They help us find our way through life. You know, when you think about a common thing for a child to say, tell me a story, tell me a story. I think there's a lot more meaning in that request than we credit when we think about it. Because it's really like saying, give me models to live by. Give me ideas of who I am and where I came from and what life is about and what's important. Tell me a story. We need stories like that. They help us find our way through life. And I think that the importance of stories is especially profound right at this time in history. Most of us, we've had our lifetimes from middle of the 20th century up until now, somewhere that period. And it's all been a period of increasing technology and facts. There's been this notion in our communities, I think, that we can figure anything out. We got the technology, we've got our phones, we can look anything up, we've got databases, we can figure anything out and fix anything. But it turns out we can't. We can't do that at all. Mysteries continue in our midst. Uncertainty, confusion, not knowing is still part of our experience. So more facts. We need more ability to deal with the mysteries, the uncertainty. And our stories that's what they're about. They're about the big questions in our lives. They're about guidance in times of uncertainty, guidance in the midst of mystery and not knowing. So I think they're really important now. I think it's important to reflect on, like in your life, what story would you tell if I asked you about a time that you were lost and you found your way? What would be the story you'd tell? We've all got stories like that, and others have shared those stories with us. And sometimes I think there's a nagging sense we're aware we really kind of need a new story at this point in our lives about where to from here. Maybe we're in a bit of a murky place or a dark place right now and really kind of need a new story about how to find our way forward from here. Stories will help us do that. Stories are very powerful. There's a famous storyteller around the country. His name is Kling. He's also an author of his books. He was on NPR for a number of years on All Things Considered. He's a really smart guy, very sought-after speaker. He was kind of born with a withered left arm, and he's dealt with a fair amount of disability and trauma in his life, and yet he's joyful and he's wise and he's funny, and he's kind of an amazing sharer of wisdom through stories. And these are some of the points he makes about the power of stories, why they're important, why they're powerful in our lives. First of all is that it gives us a kind of control. He says, when I turn something into a story, it doesn't control me anymore. I think that's absolutely true. If you can turn something into a story, you're a little bit distant from it. You're looking at that and you're interpreting it. You become not victim of something, you become the agent, the subject, and you're saying what things mean. You gain a kind of control that way. It's kind of like laughter or humor. If you laugh at something, it's the same thing. You give yourself a kind of control. You're not just subject to it anymore. You're managing it. You're looking at it. You're commenting on it. You're laughing about it. There's a kind of control, a power that comes from putting something into a story. I started thinking about, in AA circles, the lead talk is a real classic part of AA meetings. Somebody does a lead talk, which is a story of how they were lost and then how they got found. And then that story is heard by others. As they share that story, there's a power that comes from it. They gain a kind of control from sharing that story. It reminds them of what they learned and how they got through that and how they found their way into a new life. And then people listening to it, they're listening to that story and they're casting themselves in that story. And they're beginning to retell the story of their lives, gaining a kind of control over something that was uncontrollable, over that lostness. It's a powerful thing to do. And as we share our stories, like people at those Lead Me talks, as we share stories with others, we empower others to do the same, to begin to think about retelling their stories and gain a kind of control over a situation that seems out of control. The thing that's powerful about stories is they connect us. They remind us of our inner connection. They make us realize we are not alone. We are all dealing with the mysteries, the confusion, the uncertainty, asking similar questions. When we share a story with someone else and they hear it and it's received, we know we're not alone. It's not about getting answers. It's not about getting something fixed. When you share a story, you're sharing it with someone and you have the comfort of knowing you're not alone in this. We're in this together. And when you're in something together, everything becomes more manageable. Would you agree? When you know you're not the only one dealing with it, somebody else is too, it's much more manageable, whatever the situation is. It's not about getting answers. Sharing stories like this, it's about realizing we're together in the mystery, something like that. I found myself thinking when he made that point about when I was doing a lot of hospice volunteer work. I did some chaplaincy volunteer work with hospice in Columbus for a while. And of course, in hospice, everyone is dealing with their own mortality or the mortality of their loved ones. And so there are a lot of questions about what happens. What do you think happens when we die? Where do you think we go? What do you think we see? What can you tell me? And it's not like there's a real thinking that you're going to have answers for me, because none of us have these answers. But there's a sharing about it, and there's a sharing of stories. Well, when my loved ones passed, there was this happened, or we felt this, or we had these questions, or I've always had this belief. We share these kind of stories with one another, and it brings us out of isolation. It makes us feel we're all in this together. We're all facing this mystery together, and it becomes more manageable, even without answers, even in the midst of the mystery. So stories give us a kind of control. They connect us with each other or make us aware of our connection with each other. They also are healing. They're deeply healing, our stories. They help us move forward despite disappointment or discouragement. They help us move forward. Stories of all kinds, and we share them all the time and we hear them all the time. I was thinking of a little story, for some reason, it's just a tiny little story. I found it so encouraging, and I can't remember the author, but I'm thinking it might be Rachel Naomi Remen, a writer. I've enjoyed many of her books. And she was telling a story about her Jewish grandmother, she would work with her grandmother in the kitchen, and if her grandmother happened to drop an egg on the floor or on the countertop, if she happened to drop an egg, you didn't waste food in that household. Frugality was like the highest of all values. You do not waste food. So if an egg got broken in the kitchen, her grandmother would go, today we will have sponge cake. I just love that little story. It's a tiny little story about, don't worry about the broken stuff. Just find a way to make use of it, carry on, make lemonade, make sponge cake, whatever it is. Don't let it deter you, and use your imagination to find a way to move forward creatively from here. Don't be discouraged. That's a nice little story. She's shared that with many other people through her writing. And others, I'm sure, have kind of remembered that story too. It's a nice little teaching story about not worrying about the broken pieces, about keep moving forward. And we get healing stories even in our nightly life, in our dreams. I don't know about you, but I've gotten many stories in my dreams that were deeply healing and comforting. And I bet many of you have as well. Sometimes it's a visitation with a deceased loved one that brings a message of comfort you might want, some kind of a teaching story of some kind. And we get a lot of dreams in which some kind of heartache or a problem of some kind gets resolved by the story we hear in the dream, and we wake up feeling better. It's healing. I thought I'd share one of mine again that I probably shared here before about a dream I had about a cat I had named Wally. Barbie knows the story already. She's thinking about it. I had a lovely swirly orange cat named Wally for years. And he died unexpectedly outside. I didn't know what happened. Maybe a dog chased it. I don't know. So I went looking for him after a few hours and found him deceased. It was too late. I tried to the vet, visited, and it was too late anyway. So that was the end of that. And for days afterwards, I was in grief and sorrow and guilt and all of that you have, an unexpected death like that. And then I had a dream in which, and this is God at work in our lives. God is the author, this creative source in us, brings these stories in our dreams. I had a dream in which I was wandering in a medical building, like laboratories and things like that. Everybody was in white coats, wandering through hallways. And I finally go up to someone in a white coat and said, "Where's Wally? I'm looking for Wally. Where's Wally?" And she said, kind of matter-of-factly, well, at the moment, he's in the Apodome. Have you heard this story before? It's in the Apodome. That's a made-up word. I don't know where that came from. So I looked at the dictionary when I woke up feeling better. I looked up Apodome, and the word apo means sort of just off something. And dome has lots of meanings, but one of them is house of God. So Wally's just off the house of God. On his way to heaven, or however you want to think of that. That's not something I could make up. Something that can come through my subconscious. God has ways to bring us healing stories through others, through each other, through our dreams, in ways we can't even imagine. John O'Donohue, the wonderful Irish philosopher, he talked about dreams as love letters from our subconscious. I've always liked that. It explains these kind of things because God's in our subconscious. The creative energy of God is in our conscious mind, in our subconscious mind, and is always seeking to heal us of the traumas, to bring us comfort and guidance to move forward in our lives. We have the capacity, too, to create stories for ourselves consciously. And that's something to really think about, to bring ourselves comfort and greater strength and guidance. We can, instead of waiting for them to be told to us or to find them, we can create new stories for ourselves and for our loved ones. A really interesting example of that, this storyteller Kevin Kling shared, which I thought was fascinating. I told you he's born with a withered arm. It was a birth defect. Didn't slow him down a bit in his life. He's had a very vital, dynamic life, and he was a motorcycle enthusiast. And he had a terrible motorcycle accident, hit a car, or a car hit him, and the other arm was paralyzed. Trauma of that was pretty overwhelming for a while, but again, it didn't stop him. He kept going, as he kind of dealt with that and recovered. But he mentioned in a story that years later, he had a relapse of the post-traumatic stress, and he was so stressed out and so miserable and couldn't sleep. It was like it was back full force again, the trauma of that accident. So he went to his therapist, a trusted therapist he was working with, and she suggested, tell me the story of that accident again, but change it, retell it. It didn't happen, you missed the car, you got to your destination. Tell me that story. And he did. Not the story of what happened, the story of the retelling of it, the way he wished it could have gone. He retold that story. He immediately felt better. he immediately could sleep again. There's a power, there's a mystery in the power of our stories and our ability to create them that we can't track. And so he says he's kind of working with that, knowing that that isn't really happened, but it helps him to sleep and come to peace by retelling the story in another way. Well, to me that makes sense, because I think in many ways we all do that. We all do that naturally in our lives. If you have a problem in a relationship or some issue during your day, don't you sometimes find later in the day or before you go to bed, you retell it a little bit, you rework it, and you think, this is what happened, and this is why I'm struggling with that. This doesn't feel right to me, so this is what I would have done. If I'd been more conscious at the time, I would have done it this way, and I would have said that. And next time if it comes up, this is the way I'm going to approach that, and then you feel better. It's a similar kind of thing. We retell a story. And I believe this is very much what forgiveness work is all about. Forgiveness work never has anything to do with the other people or the issues out here involved, or our own mistakes, trying to forgive ourselves. It never has, it's all an inside job, and it's all about retelling the story, grabbing a lesson from it, saying, I'm not going to do that again, that didn't feel too good, I don't think that was the right thing, I'm going to change that when the opportunity comes up again. And then we sleep better. We've done the forgiveness work on the inside, and it's just sort of like a switch flips. There's nothing holding anything against us in the universe. In fact, God is always trying to guide us toward peace and freedom from any burden. And so if we forgive ourselves, if we change the story and say, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to shift it this way now, change the story this way, I'm going to be this kind of person, I'm going to say this kind of thing, I'm going to respond in this way next time, I regret having done it this way, I'm doing it this way now. That's all we need to do. We retell it on the inside, and then it brings us greater peace. Has anyone had that experience? It's a power that God shares with us, this creative power to tell a new story about ourselves, about our lives, about what's possible for us. This is in many ways a way of describing Unity's approach to prayer. We call it affirmative prayer, whereas instead of just dwelling on the story of what went terribly wrong, or what the sickness is, or what the problem is, we're very much aware of that. But instead of totally staying on that and hoping for help with it to come, we start telling a new story about it. If there's a sickness, we start telling a new story about powerful healing energy is flowing through that person. We may not be seeing it entirely yet, but who knows what's going on the low, in the levels of consciousness within as we tell that new story, bringing greater comfort, encouragement, gaining a kind of control. That can infuse a new energy into a whole situation. When we pray for someone who's dealing with issues of lack or confusion or in need of guidance, we tell that story. We tell the story of being divinely guided, of the universe orchestrating all the details for that person to step into their new life. We tell the story of renewing life in every cell and organ and sinew of their bodies, and in their minds and in their spirits. This unflappable healing energy of God is flowing. We tell that story, and that helps us sleep better. That brings us comfort, and it might just bring forth amazing miracles of healing as well. I think it happens all the time. Is it real, even if we've got a challenging situation? I think it's real. Does it bring healing? Does it bring comfort? I think so. It does all those things. It may not always order up the cure we'd like to see. It may not always put things back the way they were before that we'd like to get back, because sometimes in life that isn't possible. Would you agree? Things change. We change. Things are not going to go back to the way they were before. But God in us, that creative energy, always bringing forth new possibilities. Healing is always possible. Moving into life in a new way with new powers, new hope, new energy. We are all storytellers. It's a way God's creative energy flows through us. God shares that energy with us. And it's a good time to use that storytelling energy, that creative power, particularly if we're in a time of confusion or murkiness. Remember, we are authors. We are all storytellers, and we can tell new stories. We can tell ourselves new stories about who we are and where we've come from and where we're headed now. and the power in us that's guiding us in that direction. And we can tell those stories about our loved ones. We can tell that story about our country, about our earth. We can tell stories of empowerment and grace in action and healing energy flowing in abundance. And as we do that, we help spread that healing energy in our midst. And we bring greater peace. And we sleep a little better at night. Amen?
Amen.
All right. Let's take that into prayer for a moment if we could. How grateful we are that we are each plugged into God consciousness within us, that God's creative energy flows through us, God's renewing life, God's steadying peace, and that this is true of everyone we know and of all living beings across the globe. In our very universe, it is God-infused. So we tell stories. We seize that storytelling power that God shares with us, and we tell these highest, truest of all stories of God's living power in our midst and all that makes possible for us. Thank you, God, for your unfailing power with us always. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Ralph is going to do another song for us. Let's see what that song is called. It's a song of his. This is an original Leesburg tune. It's called Set Your Intentions.
And it came as a result of a Karen Drucker workshop that she had here called Set Your Intentions.
Oh.
And one of the things that she asked us to do was set an intention for something that we were going to do on Monday. We're going to do something. You set your intention to do something on Monday. So I set my intention to write a song. And what should I write a song about other than setting my intentions? And a Bob Marley song had been going through my head, so I figured why not do it in a reggae style? So here we go. Just set your intentions in the morning when you rise. Keep them right there in front of you. They will materialize. Don't need nobody's permission. Nobody needs to approve. Nobody's paying attention. They got their own mountains to move. Don't have to do it all at one time. No need to bite off more than you can chew. Keep moving forward one step at a time. No telling what you can do. If you just set your intentions, make them part of your plan. Do what you must to make them your reality, because you know that you can. But if you're not satisfied with all of your life, no need for you to cast blame. You've got the power within you to change. No good is waiting to claim. Start out, something else. Build on it up to the top. Add layers to it like a tapestry. Don't give up, don't ever stop. Just set your intentions in the morning when you rise. Keep them right there in front of you. They will materialize. Just set your intentions. Make them part of your plan. Do what you must to make them your reality, and do the best that you can. Just set your intentions.